Have you ever wondered what it feels like to give everything to your family, only to be reduced to a line item in their budget? Meet Rachel, a 65-year-old mother who moved in with her daughter Sarah's family, hoping to share love and laughter. Instead, she faced subtle glances, muttered complaints about utility bills, and a chilling request to cover $500 a month for her costs. What begins as a dream of togetherness unravels into a quiet transaction, leaving Rachel questioning, "Am I a burden just for existing?" This poignant story will pull at your heartstrings and make you rethink the meaning of family. Why should you watch until the end? Rachel's journey isn't just one woman's struggle. It's a mirror to our relationships, urging us to reflect on how we treat those we love. You'll witness her heart-wrenching moments of self-denial, from rationing eggs to eating alone to avoid judgment. But more than that, you'll see her reclaim her dignity in a way that's both inspiring and empowering. This video uncovers raw truths about family dynamics, the silent pain of feeling unwanted, and the courage to choose yourself. By the end, Rachel's transformation, from shrinking her existence to rediscovering her worth through art and community, offers a powerful lesson for us all. Stay with us to feel her pain, celebrate her strength, and discover why her final act of dignity could change how you view love, sacrifice, and self-worth. Don't miss this emotional ride. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. The first few days felt like a dream come true for Carol. At 65, she had always imagined that moving in with her daughter Kate's family would be the start of a new chapter, one filled with warmth, love, and togetherness. She was thrilled to help fold laundry, play games with her energetic granddaughter Emma, and even try her hand at origami, something she'd always wanted to learn. The house was full of laughter, and it felt like the kind of family connection she had longed for in her later years. But as with most dreams, this one began to unravel faster than she could have imagined. What she had thought was an invitation of love, a gesture to offer her a sense of belonging, soon became something more complicated. The warmth and affection she had hoped would flourish turned out to be the subtle beginning of a quiet transaction, a shift from a genuine family bond to an undercurrent of financial expectation. At first, Carol didn't notice, too caught up in the joy of being close to her family again. But as the days passed, the reality of the situation began to seep through. After a month of living with them, the novelty started to wear off. The initial excitement was replaced by the strain of day-to-day life. Carol still held on to the good moments, Emma's excited giggles in the mornings, their trips to the grocery store, the occasional compliment at the dinner table, "Mom, your pickles are delicious." There were still glimpses of connection, fleeting moments of what family should feel like. But deep down, Carol felt a growing tension that she couldn't quite put her finger on. One evening, as Carol reached for a jar in the fridge, she overheard Kate muttering under her breath, "The electricity bill is crazy this month. Maybe it's from all those long showers." The words weren't directly aimed at her, but they felt pointed, like an arrow thrown with the intent of making its mark. Carol froze, jar in hand, her heart sinking. It wasn't just a passing comment. It was a silent accusation, as though she was the cause of this sudden strain on the household. As she stood there, her mind raced. Is it my fault? She wondered. Am I causing this? That night, she found herself rushing through her shower, cutting back on water usage, limiting herself to every other day, and wiping down with a towel to conserve every drop. The simple act of bathing had become a ritual of guilt and self-reproach. The next week, during dinner, Carol instinctively reached for the smallest portion of grilled salmon, thinking it would give Emma a chance to have more. But as her hand hovered above the plate, she caught the briefest of glances from Kate's husband, Steve, a man who was 40 years her junior. His expression darkened for a moment, and it hit Carol like a cold wind. What did I do wrong now? She thought. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Is being considerate really this painful? Am I so invisible that every action is scrutinized, every gesture misunderstood?" Later, one afternoon, Carol received a call from her old friend Susan, who still lived in the apartment complex Carol had moved out of. "So, you're living with Kate now?" Susan asked cheerfully. Carol chuckled. "Yeah, it's lively. I'm adjusting." But Susan's voice dropped a bit. "I lived with my daughter once. It was fine at first, they said I was helping out, but then they started complaining about the water bills and the fridge being too full." Carol's smile faded, her heart sinking. "They call it family, but it feels more like a burden sometimes," she said softly, the weight of the words settling deep inside her. She had thought she was a part of the family, but now she was beginning to question everything. That night, as Carol stood in front of the bathroom mirror, she saw more than just the reflection of an aging woman. She saw the toll this living arrangement had taken on her. Deeper lines around her eyes, a slight sag at the corners of her mouth, and a dullness in her eyes that once shone with vitality. The smile that had come so easily was now a distant memory. The reflection staring back at her wasn't just the physical signs of aging. It was the emotional toll she had endured in the name of family. The next morning, as Carol prepared breakfast, Kate casually asked, "Mom, there's a disaster drill this weekend. Could you watch the kids?" Carol nodded, her smile forced, a tightness in her chest growing. "Am I here because I'm family, or just because I'm free childcare?" she thought. But the question remained unanswered, the doubt lingering in her heart like a thorn. One afternoon, while waiting for the elevator, Carol met an elderly woman who had lived with her daughter for years. The woman sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping with the weight of years spent in silence. "They told me to be like air," she said, her voice heavy with resignation. Carol's chest tightened, and those words struck her with the force of a punch. Is this what family means? To be invisible, a mere presence that doesn't matter? That night, Carol wrote in her journal, "If being like air is what family means, then who am I?" One blistering June evening, Carol was cleaning up after dinner, wiping down the dishes with methodical care, the faint sound of Emma's laughter in the background as the TV hummed softly. It was the kind of ordinary moment that used to fill her with joy, but now it felt hollow, like a routine she was bound to repeat forever. Then Kate, scrolling through her smartphone, glanced up and said, "Mom, we need to talk." Carol turned with a smile, but as she caught sight of Kate's phone screen, she noticed a budgeting app open, displaying numbers and charts. Carol's heart skipped a beat. This is it. This is the moment when everything changes. "Since you moved in," Kate said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed, "our utilities and food costs have gone up by about $500 a month. We're a bit tight on money right now. Could you help cover that? It'd make a difference." The words hung in the air like a weight she couldn't escape, and Carol felt the last threads of connection unraveling. What had once felt like a family bond now seemed like an exchange, an obligation. And Carol, who had come seeking love, now found herself questioning whether she was truly wanted, or just a burden to be managed. Carol stood there, frozen in shock, her mind racing but unable to catch up with her emotions. The words Kate had spoken hung in the air, suffocating her like a heavy, invisible weight. She couldn't bring herself to speak, couldn't force the word "sorry" to escape her trembling lips. Instead, she lowered her gaze, nodding numbly, her throat tight with the bitter sting of inadequacy. The knot inside her chest felt like it might tear her apart. Kate's words cut through her, sharp and unforgiving. "No pressure, but I know you have your pension, right? Just a little would help." They were said casually, but they struck Carol as if they'd been hurled at her with all the force of a brick. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. For the first time in her life, Carol questioned her worth, her very existence. Was this how she was seen now? Was she nothing more than a financial burden to the people she had loved and cared for her whole life? The thought gnawed at her insides, relentless and cruel. The question echoed in her mind long after Kate's voice had faded. Am I just a burden for existing? That night, sleep eluded her. She sat at her desk, her thoughts a swirling mess of doubt and despair. Her hand, shaking with the weight of it all, picked up the pen and began to write. June 18th. I've become a person worth $500. The words burned on the page as if she had written them in fire. Each letter felt like a wound she was inflicting on herself. But it was the truth, wasn't it? Her value was now reduced to nothing but a sum of money, measured by what she could contribute. The next morning, standing in the kitchen, Carol sighed deeply as she opened the fridge. The once comforting sight of food now felt like a minefield of choices, each one fraught with guilt. I'll just use one egg, she muttered to herself as if rationing her sustenance. The idea of using more felt indulgent and wasteful, even though it wasn't. She didn't want to be accused of being too much, of taking up too much space. From that moment forward, she began to shrink herself in every way. Her showers were timed, reduced to 5 minutes, a ritual of minimizing her very presence. Meals became a sad assortment of leftovers, pickled plums, and broth, consumed alone, far from the family table. She turned off the AC when she was by herself, afraid someone might notice the cost of her comfort. Laundry was done in the dead of night, carefully and quietly, so that no one could hear the machine humming and that no one would be reminded of her needs. Days passed, each one blending into the next, a blur of isolation. But one afternoon, when Kate and Emma were out, Carol found herself alone in the house, a strange silence surrounding her. She wandered into the living room and, without thinking, reached for an old photo album. As her fingers flipped through the pages, she saw moments frozen in time, fragments of a life she used to know. There was a picture of Kate at her high school graduation, beaming with pride, a moment of pure joy. A handmade school bag cover that Carol had sewn with love, a symbol of the countless hours spent nurturing her daughter. And then there was that sunny afternoon at the summer fair, when they wore matching sundresses, laughing together, feeling the warmth of the sun on their skin. Each image told the story of her devotion, of the sacrifices she had made without hesitation, without question. She had given everything for Kate's happiness, for her smile. And now, all she had to show for it was a life measured in dollars. Her heart ached as tears blurred her vision, and she whispered to herself, I gave everything for that smile, but now I'm just a cost. The sound of the phone ringing broke the spell. It was Mary, an old friend, calling to check. Carol's voice wavered as she answered. How's living together? Mary asked, her tone filled with concern. Carol hesitated, struggling to find the right words. The weight of her reality pressed heavily on her chest, and she found herself speaking the truth she had been hiding from. I feel like I'm shrinking my breath just to live, she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Mary's voice, gentle but firm, came through. Carol, is that family? That night, as the moonlight filtered through the window, Carol added to her journal. The word family has never felt so heavy and cold. She couldn't shake the thought that perhaps, in this house, in this life, she no longer belonged. From that day on, she withdrew further, retreating into herself. Dinner became a solitary ritual, an escape. She stopped sitting with the family at the table, instead choosing the corner of the kitchen, where she could prepare her meager meals in peace. Instant noodles and boiled greens, seasoned only with a pinch of salt, became her daily fare. When Kate noticed and asked why she no longer ate with them, her response was a lie, a feeble excuse designed to deflect. The flavors here feel too strong. Maybe it's my age. Less salt is better. She said it with a smile, But the truth was buried beneath the surface. The truth was, she couldn't bear the tension, the suffocating weight of not being wanted, of feeling like an outsider in her own home. The next evening, as Carol was washing lettuce in the kitchen, she overheard Kate's voice, casual and indifferent. "Having Mom here is quite a burden." The words were meant to be heard, and they landed on Carol's heart like a slap. She froze, the knife shaking in her hand as she sliced through the lettuce. The truth crashed into her like a wave, and for the first time, she wondered if she had outlived her usefulness. Maybe I don't belong here anymore. The thought lingered, dark and oppressive, as she finished preparing her lonely meal. And with it, so did the feeling that she had become nothing more than a shadow, a figure from the past, haunting the place where she had once been loved. One blistering July afternoon, with the air thick with the sound of crickets chirping and the heat pressing down on the world, Carol made her way to the bank. The weight of her decision hung heavy in the air, each step she took toward the building a reminder of how far she'd fallen. The crumpled bank book in her hand felt like a lifeline, but in reality, it was a countdown to the last of her savings. As she handed the slip to the teller and watched the money slowly be counted out in front of her, her fingers trembled. This was it, her last $1,000. The reality of what she had to do now loomed before her, unavoidable. A final, desperate breath passed her lips, and something inside her clicked. She had made her choice, and no matter how much it hurt, there was no going back. Returning to the small house she had shared with Kate, her heart sank with each step she took. She sat at her tiny desk, the stillness of the room almost deafening. Her hand moved across the paper as she carefully wrote the letter, each word feeling like it came from her very soul. "Thank you for letting me stay here. But I feel I've become a burden. I'll be leaving soon. I hope this makes things easier for you." The letter was a quiet, gentle goodbye, never blaming, never accusing, but still so full of pain that it almost crushed her. Folding it carefully, she placed it on the dining table. As the scent of dinner hung in the air, Carol made her escape in the dead of night, slipping out without a sound, leaving the life she once knew behind. The silence was her only companion, broken only by the soft sounds of the wind and the rhythm of her footsteps on the pavement, as though the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make her move. That evening, Kate found the letter. She opened it slowly, reading each word with a heaviness that sank deep into her chest. There were no accusations, no blame, but it hit her like a tidal wave, the realization that Carol had left, silently, without a word to her, only this fragile note. Kate's heart ached, the quiet devastation of the letter ripping through her even though Carol had left her no choice but to accept it. She had been given the ultimate gift of peace, but at a tremendous cost. Carol settled into a tiny, affordable apartment just a few miles from her old place. The rent was modest, $3.80 a month, but the apartment was small, old, and worn. No bath, just a shared toilet down the hall, and a kitchenette so cramped she could barely move in it. But for the first time in years, Carol felt a quiet sense of pride swell within her chest. This was hers. No one to answer to. No apologies are needed. "Here, I don't have to feel sorry for anyone," she whispered as she stirred a pot of soup, the soft sound of the spoon moving through the liquid comforting her like nothing else had in years. The peace that surrounded her was a balm, and in that moment, she could almost taste the freedom she had longed for, the simple joy of being able to exist without fear of burdening someone else. The building where she now lived was small but senior-friendly, just a short walk from the bus stop. Most of the residents were like her, older, quieter folks who had lived with their children for years but needed a place to breathe again, to reclaim their sense of self. Carol didn't mind the shared bath or the chipped fixtures that looked like they hadn't been updated in decades. What mattered was that she could be herself without anyone looking at her like she was something to be fixed or pitted. It was freedom in its most unpretentious form, and Carol soaked it in, savoring every moment. One afternoon, a flyer for a senior art class caught her eye. It was an invitation to come back to something she had long since buried. A memory stirred deep within her, Back in middle school, her art teacher had praised her drawing, and she had felt a spark of something inside her that she hadn't known was there. But life had gotten in the way. Poverty, work, responsibilities, and she had to give up that dream. Now, as an adult, that old yearning came rushing back. The art class was held twice a month at the local community center, and without a second thought, Carol signed up. At first, she merely watched, hesitant, unsure of herself. But when the time came to pick up a pencil, her hand didn't tremble with fear, but with excitement, as though it knew exactly what it was meant to do. Her first drawing was a simple tree, a peaceful thing, standing tall in a field of grass. But when the second assignment arrived, something shifted inside her. It was a free choice, a chance to draw whatever she wanted. Carol's pencil moved across the paper with purpose, sketching a woman standing at a fork in the road. One path was labeled family, and the other self. She colored it slowly, thoughtfully, wondering what the woman in the drawing would choose, and what path Carol herself had taken. As she looked at the finished piece, a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, one of quiet triumph. "This time," she whispered to herself, "I chose myself." It was a quiet victory, one that felt like reclaiming her soul, a simple yet profound realization that, at long last, she was allowed to be who she was meant to be. Life had never been easy for Carol, but she carried on with a quiet strength that could not be broken. Each day was a testament to her resilience, as she made do with what she had, always finding a way to keep going despite the challenges life threw her way. She was no stranger to sacrifice, shopping only for half-price groceries, heading to the laundromat every week to wash her clothes, and bundling herself up in a hand-knitted blanket just to save on heating costs. These small measures, though insignificant to others, were Carol's survival strategy in a world that often seemed indifferent to her struggle. But despite it all, there was something undeniably serene about her. Her face, worn by time and hardship, always carried a quiet peace, an inner calm that others could not help but notice. Carol had learned that even in the most difficult of circumstances, there was room for grace, for finding beauty in the smallest of things. One afternoon, as a group of children from the neighborhood spilled paint all over the sidewalk in a frenzy of playful chaos, their parents erupted in loud scolding. The air was thick with tension and disapproval, but Carol, standing on the porch, took it all in with an unwavering calm. She watched for a moment, then, with her trademark softness, said, "It's okay. Mixed colors make art interesting." Her words, so simple, yet so profound, seemed to calm the children instantly. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The anger in the air dissipated, replaced by a sense of wonder and possibility. The children, their faces lighting up, began to play again, this time with renewed joy. Slowly but surely, a small community began to form around Carol, a group of people drawn to her quiet wisdom, her humility, and her deep, unwavering kindness. They felt safe with her, as though her presence alone could heal the wounds of their everyday struggles. One day, Carol's art teacher, seeing the growth in her work, suggested, "We're holding a senior exhibition next month. Why don't you submit one of your pieces?" Carol hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over her. Her inner critic, always lurking in the background, whispered, "It's not good enough." Even after all the progress she'd made, the insecurities she had battled for years were hard to shake. But the teacher, seeing through her hesitation, smiled warmly and said, "It's not about others' opinions. It's about shaping the path you've walked." Carol listened, the words sinking deep into her heart. She had come so far, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to embrace her journey, no matter how imperfect it seemed to others. When the exhibition arrived, Carol's painting hung proudly on the far wall, titled simply, "My Path." It was a reflection of her life, raw and unfiltered, capturing the beauty and pain of her journey. A woman stood in front of it, her eyes welling with tears as she whispered, "Could I have taken that path too?" Carol overheard the words, and in that moment, something shifted within her. The smile that formed on her lips was not just for the woman, but for herself, for the courage it had taken to paint that piece, for the strength it had taken to stand there, to show the world who she was. Back in her small apartment, Carol stood before her mirror, and for the first time in a long while, she spoke to her reflection. "I don't need to be someone's mother or wife. I'm enough as me." She picked up her notebook and wrote, "Even a nameless step is surely a beginning." In those words, she found her affirmation, her declaration of worth. She was more than the roles she had once played. She was enough, just as she was. One crisp autumn day, Carol was invited to speak at a local community hall. The topic had weighed heavily on her heart for years. The way society so often saw seniors as burdens, as financial liabilities rather than cherished members of the family. Standing before a room full of strangers, Carol felt the weight of her words, but she did not falter. She took a deep breath, stood tall, and spoke with a quiet but firm conviction that resonated with everyone present. "I once devoted everything to my family as a homemaker, but now my existence is reduced to a line item in a budget." The room fell silent, the gravity of her words settling in the air like a heavy fog. She continued, her voice steady and unwavering. "Of course, I'd help with expenses if I could, but being told I'm a burden leaves a mother no choice but to quietly leave." There it was, the raw truth of her experience, laid bare for all to hear. Her words, calm yet powerful, reached deep into the hearts of those who listened, stirring something inside them that had long been buried. Leaving silently isn't surrender or rebellion. It's a mother's final act of dignity. In the front row, a young woman squeezed her mother's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face, as if Carol's words had unlocked something deep within her. After the speech, many people approached Carol, offering their apologies and sharing their own stories. "I should have been kinder to my mom," one woman said, her voice thick with emotion. Another added, "Thank you." Carol, her heart swelling with compassion, simply nodded gently and smiled. "It's never too late," she replied, her voice soft but filled with a quiet strength. In that moment, she realized that her voice had made a difference, that her story had touched others in a way she never expected. She had shared a piece of her soul, and in doing so, she had helped others find their path to healing. As we reflect on Carol's journey, we are reminded of the power of quiet resilience, the beauty of embracing our path, and the importance of never losing sight of our worth. Carol's story teaches us that even in the face of hardship, we have the strength to rise, to find peace in the little things, and to inspire those around us with our kindness and wisdom. Her words and actions invite us to reflect on our own lives. What are we doing to nurture our sense of dignity, purpose, and community? What have you learned from Carol's story? Is there one lesson, one moment, that resonated with you the most? I'd love to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one thing you've learned and plan to bring into your life. If you found this video inspiring, please leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more meaningful stories like this one. Your support helps us continue creating content that encourages growth, reflection, and change. Thank you for watching.